Clearly, it's Lo who's suffering more than Cha right now, when Lac Lam Vien suddenly asks what you want to eat tonight. Braised fish or sweet and sour ribs? Duhan is a bit surprised. After studying, they still have to stay for dinner. Hearing that, Lac Lam Vien feels a bit left out, not being able to have dinner together. Once Duhan realizes this, he nods in agreement, saying it's possible. The princess happily walks over to the bed. Duhan turns to ask Lac Lam Vien about yesterday's homework, but ends up blushing bright red. This isn't the first time he's seen Lac Lam Vien's body, but it's definitely the clearest. Duhan quickly turns his head, pretending to look at the textbook. Lac Lam Vien changes clothes, and when he turns back, he sees Duhan's face flushed. Are you hot? Do you need to change? But no. I have new underwear that I haven't worn yet, but it's probably smaller than yours. The more he talks, the redder Duhan's face gets. When the two start studying, the little princess feels super enthusiastic. Duhan notices that when Lac Lam Vien is serious, his lips unconsciously pout. When faced with uncertain answers, he even taps his cheek with the pen cap. This guy has so many little movements. He's still a kid. Lac Lam Vien almost marks everything in the table of contents, but he hasn't done many questions. He feels a bit embarrassed, knowing he's not great at studying. Duhan looks at the marked circles, stays silent for a moment, and finally helplessly says he should start explaining from the beginning. The little princess immediately leans in closer. Just then, there's a knock at the door, and Lac Lam Vien jumps. The sudden movement makes the chair wobble and almost fall. Duhan reacts quickly, immediately grabbing his arm. The two bump into each other again. Uncle Nu's face twitches slightly. He doesn't know what to say at the sight before him because his little master is sitting on the lap of the tutor. Both hands are tightly hugging the other's neck. They quickly separate, and Duhan summarizes the situation. Just now, Uncle Ngo calmly glanced at Lac Lam Vien, saying it's nothing since they're both boys. Let me get you a sturdier chair, young master. After that, they continue studying. But in the little princess's mind, all he can think about is Duhan's really toned legs. How can he stay calm? He glances at Duhan and huffs. Why does this embarrassing thing only happen to him? His heart races, while Duhan remains calm as if nothing happened. After studying, Lac Lam Vien looks at the arrangement of bowls and chopsticks, which are spaced apart. He immediately feels unhappy and places Duhan's bowl right next to him, even telling the chef to arrange the dishes a bit closer. Duhan looks at the steaming hot soup in front of him. Suddenly, he feels a warmth in some corner of his heart because Duhan said they shouldn't talk while eating. The little princess feels wronged, like he's being bullied by him. Just then, a piece of rib is picked up from his bowl. Don't be picky. Don't just eat fish. Eat something else too. Lac Lam Vien's eyes brighten even more. Duhan pauses a bit, seeing him look like a child craving affection. Ben picks up a few more pieces. At that moment, his mom comes downstairs, and Lac Lam Vien puts down his chopsticks, trying to smile. Mom, do you want to eat with us? Lam Thu glances at the food spread. Is this intentional? Knowing her health isn't great but still not being careful, wanting to land herself in the hospital. And then the whole Lac family will say, I'm a mother who doesn't know how to take care of her child. Duhan stands up to apologize to Auntie, saying these dishes are what he wanted to eat. That's why Tio Vien asked the maid. His mom doesn't respond, just turns to go upstairs. Lac Lam Vien lowers his head, realizing his mom does care about him. It's just her way of showing it makes him sad. Duhan looks at him and reaches out to pat his head. Eat quickly. This time I'll let you eat to your heart's content. Help him pull up the jacket that's sliding down. What kind of clothes are you wearing? Why not wear something shorter? Duhan continued. I didn't eat breakfast, you take it back. Lac Lam Vien isn't happy. I went through a lot to buy it for you. Duhan didn't pay attention, just replied he wasn't eating. The little princess angrily picked up her things and left. Nam Tu felt a bit surprised. When did these two get so close? A day quickly passed. Nam Tu originally planned to call Duhan but didn't expect him to. Pack up his books and leave right after class. In the end, he followed behind and saw Duhan at the back waiting for someone. Lac Lam Vien threw his bag at Duhan. Duhan wasn't even mad and walked alongside Lac Lam Vien while Nam Tu watched from behind. Feeling empty inside, Duhan turned to ask him, What's up? Not happy? Are you still mad about this morning? Why is Lac Lam Vien acting all prickly? If you don't say anything, then just, what does it have to do with me? No matter what, I won't bring it to you again. Didn't I say 3 extra classes a week? Why is Duhan asking? Why don't you want to study today? As a result, Duhan grabbed his hand and pulled him into the restroom. What are you sulking about? Lac Lam Vien just wanted to get out, trying hard to push Duhan away, but the floor was slippery. He fell backward. Lac Lam Vien panicked. If he really fell on this dirty restroom floor, he'd rather die. Duhan immediately hugged him tightly. The little princess pressed his cheek against his chest. His nose was filled with Duhan's scent. He could even hear his heartbeat. In that rhythm, Duhan spoke, "Little Vienne, be good." Lac Lam Vienne felt like this word good had him under a spell. He suddenly went silent in the car. In Lac Lam Vienne's mind, all he could think about was what just happened. He glanced at Duhan, secretly wondering why he liked teasing him. No, wait, it was clearly Duhan who liked teasing him first. It wasn't just him being proactive. Duhan took him home, set up a tent for him, grilled food for him to eat, cooked for him. No one had ever done this for him like Duhan. He grew up fast, deep thoughts, stable personality. But even so, it couldn't explain his current reaction when Duhan hugged him. Seeing the little princess like this, Duhan also noticed he was still mad. What was Lac Lam Vienne thinking? Bringing breakfast to someone else is no different from a girl confessing or a boy pursuing his girlfriend. Could it be that Lac Lam Vienne doesn't know? Or does he really have feelings for me? Duhan recalled what happened yesterday in Lac Lam Vienne's room. They shouldn't be like this. Rarely did Duhan get affected. All his thoughts were tightly wrapped around Lac Lam Vienne. Even he didn't recognize Lac Lam Vienne's feelings. Like being bathed in soft pink light, Duhan's gaze slightly trembled. Instinct overpowering reason. He raised his hand and directly grabbed Lac Lam Vienne's neck. Lac Lam Vienne didn't know what Duhan was planning. He just felt blood rush to his head. He quickly stepped back. Lac Lam Vienne almost wanted to cry. Why isn't Duhan letting go of his neck now? Don't be mad anymore. So can I still have dinner with you tonight? At this moment, he noticed Lac Lam Vienne's ears were also turning red. Duhan suddenly realized what silly thing he just did. He quickly withdrew his hand, slightly frowning in regret. At that time, Lac Lam Vienne looked at him and softly replied, "Okay." Inside, Duhan felt a bit annoyed. Lac Lam Vienne's reaction was too clear. He might as well have printed on his forehead. But amidst that annoyance, there was a bit of satisfaction, a kind of almost wicked pleasure. The little princess, after getting off the car, ran straight into the house. "I'm going to shower now. The extra classes are still at the same place. Okay?" Duhan was a bit stunned. So hasty? The little princess tossed her bag aside, ran straight into the bathroom. He curled up like a beast, alert as if tears could flow out at any moment. You actually have feelings for Duhan? The next morning, Lac Lam Vienne woke up super early and looked at Jie's bed, feeling down about dreaming that. In the dream, Duhan pressed him against the wall and kissed him. I wonder what it would feel like to actually kiss Duhan. Wait, what are you thinking? On the basketball court, Duhan is sweating and showing off, and Lac Lam Vienne hears some girls nearby. They're quietly whispering and snapping photos, and he grits his teeth, staring at Duhan in the middle of the court. This carefree man is radiating charm, and Lac Lam Vienne totally wants that picture from earlier. Just then, Phuong Tiu runs over, shamelessly asking Lac Lam Vienne, "Did you see how cool he looked just now?" But his bestie, Lac Lam Vienne, completely ignores him. He's just staring at the girl next to Duhan. Phuong Tiu looks over and clicks his tongue, saying, "Girls totally dig guys like Du." Lac Lam Vienne immediately strides over to them. "Duhan likes that type? What's so great about it? Ice cream left out in the sun too long." The syrup sticks to his fingers, and Lac Lam Vienne feels a chill, pulling himself back to reality, frowning at his sticky fingers. Phuong Tiu gets the hint and quickly pulls out a tissue to help him wipe his hands. "Don't eat anymore, or you'll get a stomachache." Duhan looks over. His gaze lands on those hands, and Lac Lam Vienne turns to talk to Duhan, only to catch his icy stare. Lac Lam Vienne feels frozen, temporarily forgetting what to say. Phuong Tiu also notices that look and quickly pulls Lac Lam Vienne away. "Are you dumb? Can't you see Duhan's eyes? You're bothering him while he's chatting with the school beauty. But does he really need to act like he hates you that much?" Phuong Tiu's words make Lac Lam Vienne even more frustrated. Just thinking about how Duhan will like some girl in the future makes him feel so uncomfortable. Phuong Tiu sees the little princess clutching her chest and squatting down. He immediately worries, "Little Vienne, don't scare me. What's wrong?" Lac Lam Vienne looks straight into Phuong Tiu's eyes and seriously says each word, "I like a man." Phuong Tiu gasps, clutching his chest. "No way!" Lac Lam Vienne sees his reaction and feels even more of a headache. "Of course it's not you, it's Duhan. I like Duhan." After class, Duhan approaches Lac Lam Vienne during gym class. "You wanted to talk, right?" Lac Lam Vienne replies, "I just wanted to ask if we have extra study tonight." Duhan purposely says no. Lac Lam Vienne is getting annoyed by his teasing. Why is Duhan saying no? We've been studying for so many days. I want a break too. Lac Lam Vienne grits his teeth. "I don't want a break. I want to get into a top school. I love studying. I need to get the highest scores on all my finals." Duhan looks troubled. "I can't help with that. Getting the highest scores is too much. Or let your dad change teachers." This time, Lac Lam Vienne is really angry and turns to walk away. Duhan grabs Lac Lam Vienne's hand. "You have to study step by step." Lac Lam Vienne is annoyed. Who doesn't have a bit of a temper? I'm going to find Fuang Tio to play games. If you didn't want to teach me, you shouldn't have agreed in the first place. Why do you keep teasing me? After saying that, he continues walking ahead. Duhan snatches Lac Lam Vien's bag. It's too heavy. I'll carry it for you or you'll get crushed. One is happily walking ahead, and the other is gloomily following. Duhan walks straight into a convenience store, and when he comes out, he's holding a bottle of strawberry milk for Lac Lam Vien. Lac Lam Vien looks up. Are you bribing me? Duhan nods and smiles. Yep. Lac Lam Vien takes a sip, and the sweet strawberry flavor spreads through his heart. Just one bottle? Duhan hears his exaggerated tone and pretends to ask, don't like it? And reaches out to grab the milk back. Lac Lam Vien refuses. You already gave it to me. Are you asking for it back? So the two chase each other on the way home, and the little princess hands Duhan the exam paper. If I improve, then, is there a reward? Duhan looked at the progress paper for the final exam. Duhan shook his head. If it's too unreasonable, I won't agree. Lac Lam Vien unconsciously said that he's a grown man, and if he doesn't want to do it, there's no way I can force him. Duhan's expression. A bit flushed. Are you saying this has to do with physical contact? Lac Lam Vien quickly covered his mouth. What nonsense are you saying? Who said anything about physical contact? Where? Duhan sighed in relief. Good if it's not that. Lac Lam Vien felt something was off. Duhan's tone sounded like he understood. I can see all your thoughts. Duhan has to work part-time, while the little princess feels like time is flying by too fast, wanting to stay with Duhan a little longer while bringing food to his mom. The two of them ended up arguing about their dad. The little princess felt very wronged and called Duhan to say she wanted to drink, asking if she could come to where he works. Duhan was silent for a long time, but in the end, he didn't refuse. If she wanted to come, then let her. But you can only drink half a glass. When Lac Lam Vien arrived, Duhan wasn't at the bar, but another staff member in a black shirt was on duty. The staff member asked if he was looking for Duhan. He's in the staff break room. Someone just caused a mess on his clothes. Lac Lam Vien thanked him and went straight to the break room. The door was slightly ajar, and the little princess, without thinking, pushed the door open, just in time to catch Duhan turning his back to the door, taking off his shirt. It was the first time Lac Lam Vien saw the tattoo on Duhan's shoulder. It didn't look like a regular tattoo at all. He hurried over. What's going on? Who did this? Who burned you? Duhan's heart tightened, quickly putting on a black shirt. His eyes clearly showed resistance. Lac Lam Vien couldn't hold back his emotions, crying and saying he wouldn't ask anymore. Please don't hate me. He felt extremely uncomfortable. Why does the person he likes always find him annoying? Why are you crying? So childish. Duhan didn't do anything wrong. He was just wallowing in his pain. In his heart, Duhan embraced him. I don't hate you. Please stop crying. If you want to know, I'll tell you. It's nothing serious. I used to have a rich friend who said he would pay me as long as I let him tattoo something on me. If I got it done on me, he would give me 5,000 yuan. At that time, I was short on cash, so I agreed. Well, I don't want to talk about it because I feel stupid. I don't want anyone to see it. Not because I really hate you, so please stop crying. At this moment, Duhan realized something was off. Why is your head so hot? You have a fever. Wait a minute. I'll go ask for leave. Lac Lam Vien sat on the sofa, recalling what was just said. Duhan feels angry. What a scam. Who would burn their own shoulder with a cigarette? Maybe that scar was also caused by that friend. Causing it, and Duhan endured it for money. They knew he was short on cash, so they used money to humiliate him. That's just too much. Duhan turned around and handed his hoodie to Lac Lam Vien to wear. Otherwise, he would catch a cold later. Lac Lam Vien obediently put it on. What about your part-time job? Duhan adjusted his clothes for him, took him to the hospital, and then went back to make up for work. Lac Lam Vien shook his head in protest. I can go to the hospital by myself. Duhan sighed. Helpless. I can't be at ease. Lac Lam Vien was a bit surprised. After the transfer to the hospital, the little princess pointed at her tongue. It's too bitter. Can I drink milk tea? Duhan was puzzled. How can a transfer be bitter? Right across from them was a young couple. The girl giggled, and the fair-skinned boy across was acting cute with his boyfriend. Lac Lam Vien couldn't hear what they were saying. He just felt very jealous as those two talked and laughed together. So, the little princess smiled faintly, slowly leaning to rest her head on Duhan's shoulder. But Duhan awkwardly stood up. I'm going to the bathroom. This scene was seen by the girl across. She laughed even louder. Lac Lam Vien didn't bother to pay attention, just annoyed and scrunched his nose. Why did Duhan have to go to the bathroom right now? At this moment, Duhan turned around holding a white bunny milk candy in his hand. He peeled off the wrapping paper. He split the candy in half and brought it to the boy's mouth. Isn't it bitter? Why are you so smug with that candy in your mouth? The sweetness seeped deep into his heart. Did you really ask the nurse for help? Duhan looked at Lac Lam Vien. He couldn't hold back a smile, shaking his head, saying it wasn't the time to come back from the bathroom. The nurse had just given him a shot and handed it to me. Lac Lam Vien's smiling face was radiant. His lips pouted as if he wanted to spit the candy out. Duhan immediately said, "Don't spit it out, Lac Lam Vien." He sulked, turning his head to one side, trying to show he was angry, but then thought about how Duhan had purposely taken time off to go to the doctor with him. He still had to go back to work later. He didn't know when tonight's shift would end. He calmed down, losing his fierce demeanor. He turned back and asked, "Do you want to sleep for a bit?" Duhan looked at the water bottle as it dripped slowly. "No, you still have to change the bandage later," Lac Lam Vien said. "I can watch you. Just lean on me and sleep for a bit." Duhan hesitated slightly, and Lac Lam Vien sat up straight, patting his shoulder. "Sleep. If not, you'll be so tired tomorrow. If you're sleepy, you won't be able to focus in class. If your grades drop, how will you teach me? I'm sacrificing my role for your grades." Lac Lam Vien spoke at length for the first time, thinking that if Duhan didn't agree, he would keep nagging until he did. At first, he thought it would be a long battle, but a second later, Duhan had already rested his head on his shoulder. Lac Lam Vien immediately fell silent, not daring to say anything more. His breath stopped for a moment. He didn't dare to change positions, only asking slowly, "Do you feel okay?" Duhan's voice was a bit sluggish. Lac Lam Vien said, "I brought headphones. Can I play some music for you?" Duhan replied, Lac Lam Vien took out his phone, plugged in the headphones, and handed them to Duhan. Duhan pulled one side of the headphones over and put it in his ear. He thought maybe it was because his left ear was resting on his shoulder, so it wasn't convenient to wear, but this still fulfilled his own purpose. He stuffed the other earbud into his ear and pressed play on the late-night playlist. A deep, husky female voice rang out. First was a love song. The humming was very ambiguous. He saw a couple sitting across from each other whispering. The girlfriend blushed, unable to contain her excitement, looking nothing like someone who was sick, shaking her boyfriend's hand. She expressed her inner excitement. At that moment, the boyfriend covered her eyes, not letting her look at Lac Lam Vien anymore. He felt confused, thinking this girl was really weird. Just then, he heard Duhan call his name, and Lac Lam Vien lost his mood, saying before, "Didn't you call me Little Vien?" Duhan chuckled softly. "Little Vien, thank you," Lac Lam Vien thought to himself. "I should be the one thanking you," but out loud he said, "In return for the candy, even though it wasn't specially for me." Duhan smiled again, that annoying smile. He said, "I asked her if she had candy, and she said my little brother is weak. If he doesn't get candy, he'll cry." Lac Lam Vien wanted to act angry, retorting that he never cried, but he couldn't get the words out, just feeling embarrassed, so embarrassed that he felt like curling up. Lac Lam Vien's head gradually lowered. Finally, he couldn't resist the drowsiness, leaning his head on Duhan and falling asleep. The two young boys leaned against each other, sleeping. In the cold, empty space of the hospital, they looked like two little animals keeping each other warm. The girl sitting across from them silently screamed at the cuteness, even planning to sneak a photo. The girl looked up and immediately met the gaze of someone who had just woken up. She only saw the other person looking at her mobile phone, making her feel super embarrassed. Like, oh my god, I gotta delete this right now. Like, isn't her behavior basically spying? And the person involved caught her. Duhan took off his earphones. He gently tucked them into Lac Lam Vien's other ear. He was sure the guy was sound asleep, and with the earphones on, he finally spoke up. Before deleting, his voice was hesitant, but he ended up saying, "Send it to me first." That girl was looking at her boyfriend and was determined to dive into trouble. "Messaging through WeChat?" Duhan coldly said Bluetooth. The water's done transferring, and he went to call the nurse to help Lac Lam Vien remove the IV. When removing the IV, Lac Lam Vien bled a lot. The alcohol-soaked cotton ball turned completely red. Duhan reminded him to apply pressure. "Dude, your ability to stop the bleeding is weak. It's because you're anemic." Lac Lam Vien shook his head, saying he was indeed anemic. His health was pretty poor. After leaving the hospital, Duhan asked Lac Lam Vien if he wanted to play ball with them. Lac Lam Vien immediately refused, saying he hated the sun. Duhan looked at him, dressed all in white, jokingly said he didn't need to worry about getting dark with that pale skin. Lac Lam Vien shot him a glare, saying he wasn't feeling well from being in the sun. "It's not that I'm afraid of getting sunburned. A little tan adds some manliness." Duhan's skin tone is exactly the type Lac Lam Vien dreams of. Like, it's that smooth honey color, healthy and attractive, paired with those sharp features. His face is just so handsome, making Lac Lam Vien keep staring, just like Lac Lam Vien himself. Duhan's skin tone is natural. When he said that, Lac Lam Vien didn't believe him, saying, "Show me." He reached out to lift up Duhan's shirt. This revealed part of his waist. Duhan turned around and saw Lac Lam Vien staring at his waist with a lovesick expression, his face turning red as he quickly pulled his shirt down, saying, "Stop looking." Lac Lam Vien was dumbfounded. His figure was really nice. Duhan bluntly told him to shut up. When Lac Lam Vien saw him blushing, he couldn't help but laugh. "Are you embarrassed? We're both guys, come on, I'll let you see mine." After saying that, he lifted his shirt to show off his belly. His skin was pale and soft, with no abs, just like a kid's belly. Duhan glanced at it and then told him to put his shirt down. "So immature, you'll catch a cold," Lac Lam Vien said. His eyes were bloodshot, and he told him not to go back to the bar to work anymore, okay? "How can your body handle it if you don't rest enough?" Duhan blinked and didn't answer that question, instead saying the alcohol stings his eyes. Right after he said that, Lac Lam Vien quickly apologized, saying sorry he forgot to wipe his eyes, asking if they still sting. "Let me help you clear your throat." Duhan slid up and down. Before he could say yes or no, Lac Lam Vien had already done it. He touched his lips to Duhan's rosy ones, slightly pouting. He took a small breath and gently blew into Duhan's eyes. The whole thing happened in an instant, and Duhan's brow twitched. When the cool sensation hit, he instinctively closed his eyes, not even realizing Duhan was bending down, lowering his face. Lac Lam Vien leaned on his shoulder, excitement and thrill flooding his mind. He looked at Duhan with his eyes tightly shut, feeling that his expression was like he was waiting for a tempting kiss. The one who likes him is me, wanting to commit a crime. Lac Lam Vien inched closer until the headlights of a passing car flashed, accompanied by a loud honk. Lac Lam Vien was scared to death, his heart racing, then looked at the person next to him. Duhan was still very calm, turning his head to look at the car, asking if it was the one he called. Lac Lam Vien hurriedly took out his phone to check the license plate, and yep, let's go, let's go. As he bent down to head towards the car, Duhan hid, his hand, which was hovering in the air, behind his back, clenching it into a fist, and in the end, Duhan still didn't go back. He handed over the house key. The hand is hanging in the air, behind the back, fist clenched tight. In the end, Duhan still doesn't come back. He hands over the house key. Lac Lam Vien said if he didn't want to go to a hotel, he could sleep at his place. The bedding was just changed a few days ago. Lac Lam Vien, with his backpack slung over his shoulder, reluctantly asked if he was going home. Duhan quickly replied. After changing into his work uniform, he asked what Lac Lam Vien wanted for breakfast. Lac Lam Vien pouted, still questioning the meal. Looks like he was working all night. If someone else buys alcohol from him, does he get a commission? Duhan paused, not answering. Lac Lam Vien understood from his attitude that he wanted to buy alcohol to keep here for occasional drinking. Duhan closed the cabinet. He whispered that he was still a high school student. What was he drinking? Lac Lam Vien replied that he could still come here to drink even when he went to college. Isn't that right? Lac Lam Vien wanted to drink, so he asked Duhan to wrap a bottle for him. "I want it." Buying it as a gift for his dad, Duhan wiped the wine glass, looking indifferent. Lac Lam Vien couldn't figure out what he was thinking. It wasn't until he carefully wrapped the bottle for him that Lac Lam Vien asked if he was mad. Duhan replied, "Why would I be mad?" "Exactly. Why would he be angry? Isn't it a good thing?" Lac Lam Vien held the bottle close. He felt frustrated for overthinking and making himself anxious. He cared too much about Duhan before. Realizing he liked him, he was already very attentive. Lac Lam Vien jumped off the chair, saying, "I'm off." At this moment, a customer came in asking for drinks, and Duhan went to mix. He didn't even say goodbye, leaving Lac Lam Vien feeling a bit neglected. The atmosphere at the hospital was so good earlier, but here it went back to the way it was. He took a taxi home, while Duhan took a nice shower. After changing into pajamas, he explored Duhan's house. With 2 bedrooms and a living room, there wasn't much space to roam. But just thinking about this being where Duhan grew up made every corner seem interesting. He wandered around the house. Looking at a photo of Duhan and his mom, it was clear his mom was a beauty. She wore a faint smile looking at the camera. Holding a child in her arms, Lac Lam Vien stared at the photo, doubting his dad's words. How could someone so beautiful in her youth, like Lac Din, not be moved at all? Although Lam Thu was also very pretty, Lac Lam Vien, childishly comparing who was prettier, his mom or Duhan's, he concluded that everyone was beautiful in their own way. He happily rubbed the face of little Duhan in the photo. Lac Lam Vien mumbled, "How could my mom not love me?" Clearly, she held him. His hand looked so happy in the photo, as if he was her joy. "My mom and I don't even have a photo together," Lac Lam Vien. Carefully returning the photo to its place, he then pulled out all the snacks he bought last time. Sure enough, Duhan didn't eat much. He only picked a few milk candies to eat, and then went to brush his teeth. Laying on Duhan's bed, Lac Lam Vien felt like he was about to burst into flames. He secretly sniffed the smell of the pillows and blankets. They had just been aired out not long ago, still holding the scent of sunshine. Creating a breath that was both ambiguous and hot, as if being embraced by Juhan, Lac Lam Vien tightened his grip on the blanket. His palms gradually became damp. He wanted to do something naughty. No way. This was too depraved and filthy. How could he do that on his crush's bed? He kicked the blanket aside and moved the fan from the living room into the bedroom, turning on the fan freely in the crisp autumn weather. At dawn, Duhan finally returned home, the fan creaking as it worked. The cool atmosphere made Duhan, who had just showered, feel a bit chilly. Plus, Lac Lam Vien was still feverish. That kid was acting up again. It's already hot, and you're still blasting the fan? He turned off the fan and looked over at the huge lump on the bed. Lac Lam Vien curled up like a shrimp, his head buried in the blanket. Only a few strands of hair were sticking out. Duhan rubbed his aching temples. He grabbed a blanket from the wardrobe and lay down straight next to Lac Lam Vien, who was still sleeping. He fell asleep really quickly, vaguely feeling something snuggle into his chest, so he instinctively hugged it. The next morning, when he woke up, Duhan was stiff and pulled his hand back. He carefully stood up and rushed into the bathroom. Little did he know, after he left the room, Lac Lam Vien opened his eyes too. Today, Lac Kong Chua surprisingly went to school early, which freaked Fung Tiu out. Why so early? Lac Lam Vien picked up a pen and scribbled a few lines, waking up early. As Fung Tiu sat down, he cautiously asked, "Where did you go last night?" "Uncle Ngo called me asking if you were at my place." At Duhan's house, Fung Tiu was shocked. You. He put on a motherly face, almost saying, "Mom wouldn't allow you to do that." "What's going on with Lac Lam Vien?" "We didn't do anything. Are you free tonight?" "I don't have any extra classes. Come with me to this place." Fung Tiu sighed in relief. "You scared me to death. Where are we going after school?" Lac Lam Vien took Fung Tiu to the shop. He saw it this morning, and Fung Tiu looked up at the 6 words, "Scorpio Tattoo Shop," hesitantly saying, "Are you rebelling because you had a fight with your mom? Want to get a tattoo of Thon Long or Bach Ho? Your brothers won't get tattooed with you. Our relationship isn't at that level yet." Lac Lam Vien wanted to hit him, holding up the design he had worked on all afternoon, but it still looked terrible. It was super messy, and as soon as Fung Tiu saw it, he snatched the drawing away. After looking at it, he almost stumbled and fell to the ground. On the pristine white paper was a drawing of the symbol for the South. No way, Tiu Vien Vien. You'll definitely regret it later. Then you'll blame me for not stopping you." Lac Lam Vien raised his hand, ready to fight. "I'm older than you. Who's the big brother here? Give it back to me." Fung Tiu wouldn't give in and finally took Lac Lam Vien to the donut shop downstairs from the tattoo parlor. He ordered a big portion of donuts for himself. He ordered Lac Lam Vien a strawberry milkshake, telling him to drink some milk to calm down. Lac Lam Vien sipped the pink milkshake. It was cold, and his lips became moist. So basic. "What?" Fung Tiu, happily munching on half a donut, struggled to swallow and said, "Not only basic, but also shocking. Getting a tattoo is a lifelong decision. Don't mess around. Where do you plan to get it?" Lac Lam Vien hugged his drink, mumbling softly about his left shoulder blade, but Fung Tiu immediately thought, "You're not doing it because of Teacher Du, right? I remember Teacher Du has a tattoo." Fung Tiu didn't wait for him to ask and continued, "But none of us have ever seen Teacher Du's tattoo. Could it be? Our cool Teacher Du has this boy tattoo on him? I can't accept that." Fung Tiu saw Lac Lam Vien's mood drop, and his expression worsened. Thinking he might have gone too far, he softened his tone. "It really is because of Teacher Du." Lac Lam Vien gulped down half the milkshake as if he was drinking to get drunk. "Hey, don't say anymore. I'm not getting a tattoo anymore." So Lac Lam Vien still felt sluggish and down. Fung Tiu added, "Oh, if you really are getting a tattoo, because of Teacher Du, you don't have to get the same design as him. Try to find a tattoo with a similar meaning instead." Lac Lam Vien asked him what he was thinking of getting. "Are you sure you want to get it? Do you really like him that much? For life?" Lac Lam Vien thought, "What's something for life?" Fung Tiu said, "You're still crazy like that." Lac Lam Vien felt it was worth it. "I want to engrave him on my body. He's good to me." Emotions and expressions are also fading. Thinking he might have been too loud, he tones it down. It's definitely because of Teacher Ru's influence. Lac Lam Vien takes a big gulp of half a milkshake, as if trying to drink himself into a stupor. He says, "Dude, stop talking. I'm not getting a tattoo anymore." Yet, Lac Lam Vien still feels sluggish and down. Fung Tiu adds, "Oh, if you really want to get a tattoo for Teacher Du, you don't have to get the same design as everyone else. Try finding a tattoo with a similar meaning instead." Lac Lam Vien asks him, "What are you thinking of getting? Are you sure you really want to get one? Do you really like him that much? For life?" Lac Lam Vien thinks, "Is there really anything for life?" Fung Tiu, is that really you? You're still this crazy. Laklam Vien feels it's worth it. I want to engrave him on my body, he's been good to me. Looking back, it doesn't seem painful. Fuang Tiu really isn't hurt? Duhan doesn't even like you, and you still think it's worth it? Laklam Vien said, I like him, but that doesn't mean I can force him to like me back. Love isn't that simple, you know? So, if both sides are willing, that would be great. If not, there's nothing we can do. As for the tattoo, of course, I have to take responsibility for it myself. Besides, I'm willing now after whispering and discussing it. Finally, the two of them went upstairs to find the Scorpio tattoo shop, where they were greeted by a girl with super short hair. She was wearing a short black shirt, and her entire arm was covered in tattoos. The girl asked them what the design was and how big they wanted it. Laklam Vien, what about a colorful icebreaker fish? Think carefully, because colored tattoos can't be removed. Laklam Vien replied firmly. If I'm getting a tattoo, I won't think about removing it. Fuang Tie quietly asked him about the meaning of this tattoo. Laklam Vien's face turned slightly red as he answered that the icebreaker fish symbolizes melting ice and snow, that spring has come, which is his spring. When they went outside, Laklam Vien peeled open a chocolate wrapper, popped it in his mouth, and had chocolate smudged on the side of his mouth. Fuang Tu scolded him, saying he was dirty. Laklam Vien nonchalantly said, Wipe it for me, my hands are busy. With one hand holding the chocolate and the other holding a drink, he pouted, Here, you wipe it. Fuang Tio had no choice but to pull the heavy snack bag towards his elbow, like an old dad taking care of his little girl, using a tissue to wipe the mouth of the little princess with such force that Laklam Vien shot him a glare. The skin around his mouth turned red. Are you trying to slice my mouth off? Fuang Tia crumpled the tissue into a ball and threw it in the trash. Changing the subject, he said, I think I just saw teacher do. Laklam Vien quickly asked, Where? Is my face still dirty? Is it dirty? You should have said something sooner. Fuang Tu seemed to have lost sight of him. Probably just mistook him. Laklam Vien sipped his coke. How could Duhan be that handsome? There's no way I mistook him. Fuang Tu, fine. You like him, so whatever you say is right. Laklam Vien took out his phone, wanting to message Duhan, asking, Where are you? Or, should I ask Duhan if he wants to hang out with us? But then he quickly remembered that he didn't get much sleep last night. There's no way he has the energy to have fun. After thinking it over, he texted, I feel like I'm much better now. Thanks for taking care of me last night. Rest well. Remember to catch up on sleep. He had no idea someone was watching him from not too far away. At that moment, Kin Lam, the girl at the Scorpio tattoo shop, went downstairs to get food and accidentally saw Duhan. She approached and patted Duhan's back. What are you looking at? Duhan's body shook, recognizing her voice. I called you, Sister Kin, and stepped back a bit. He was holding a paper bag with the brand logo printed on it. Kin Lam glanced at the stuff in his hands and immediately understood. Going to a funeral? Duhan smiled. That's right, a funeral. Kin Lam had known him for a long time, and seeing his smile not reaching his eyes, she asked, Why do you look so sad? Is it because you don't have enough money? I can lend you some. Duhan quickly replied, No need, sis. I have enough money. He carried the paper bag upstairs. The owner of the Scorpio tattoo shop is a man named Tu Tio Hio. When Tu Tio Hio saw Duhan, his surprise lasted about 3 seconds before he noticed the bag in his hand and widened his eyes. Did the boss send you? Duhan placed the bag on the desk. The boss usually says, He's wrong, wants to go home tonight. Tu Tio Hio didn't look at the paper bag but said, Don't mention him. Is your grandma doing well? Has that annoying old man bothered you lately? Duhan said, My brother and I often scare him like that. The bag hits the computer desk. The master often says, He's wrong, he wants to go home tonight. Tu Tio Hio doesn't look at the paper bag, just says, Don't mention him. Is grandma still doing well? Has that annoying old man been bothering you lately? Duhan says, You and I often scare him like that. I think he won't show up in front of me anymore for a while. Thanks for handing over the shop to another tattoo artist, dude. He pulled Duhan down the stairs without even looking at the paper bag the other guy was carrying. They headed to the hot pot restaurant. Tu Tio Hio ordered a bunch of meat, and it was a blast. While eating, Duhan asked if Tu Tio Hio saw 2 guys in uniforms at the shop earlier. Tu Tio Hio had no idea Duhan knew those 2 kids, so she just casually brushed it off. Speaking of which, he suddenly remembered if your school was about to hold a parent-teacher meeting, so he could prepare a bit. Dyeing his hair again, he usually argued with him a few times, but Tu Tio Hio still wouldn't back down. But attending the parent-teacher meeting was a different story. She found herself accidentally mentioning her boyfriend, Tu Tio Hio. It was a different story, finding herself accidentally mentioning her boyfriend from the novel.